This is the story of how Nova Grappler became a hero. Now, while I would like to spend the entire video talking about Nova Grappler, we have something slightly more important to talk about. So, since the start of the Reboot news, we've mostly been shown Kagero and Royal Paladin cards, and that's basically kept up for about a month, I want to say, since we actually got the first news of the Reboot. And so now we're finally starting to get Nova Grappler and Oracle Think Tank reveals, and they're actually a little bit different than what some people expected. Not in how they would function in terms of the clans, but rather the base power of the boss grade 3s. Yes, it seems that Force is gonna be the only clan type that's gonna have 13k bases, and both Protect as well as Accel clans will be having 12k bases. At first I wasn't sure if it was just Ashura Kaiser and CEO Amaterasu that have this sort of, exception, but we have received more reveals of Nova Grappler and Oracle Think Tank cards from monthly Bushiroad, and it does confirm that there is even more of these grade 3 bosses that do share the same power bases. Now, I've seen a lot of people online already start to freak out about this, and I do understand why, because some people expected that Protect might have 14k base because it's supposed to be the defensive type, but in my opinion, the reason why Force is the one that has the most power is a little bit different. I would like to present my own ideas and thinking behind this in this video, and then I'd like to hear back from you guys in the comments on what you think on this power discrepancy, as well as just in general what each power means for each clan type. So my idea as to why they made 13k bases just for Force is because they presented Force as this clan type that is able to balance between some offense and some defense. So it's not going the full offensive way, the way that Accel gets an extra rearguard circle, which is just a whole nother level of aggression, and it's not going the full defensive way in which you're getting a free perfect guard every time you ride. But rather, it's the sort of, you get the aggressive part out of the actual Force, so in getting an extra 10k on any specific circle that you want, but then it has this slightly more defensive side in that it has a 13k base on the grade 3. Now, Protect on the other hand, I again will bring back that people expected it to be at least 13k or 14k because it's supposed to be the most defensive, but because you should be getting those perfect guards fairly easily, I think it shouldn't be the biggest problem. And I guess Oracle Think Tank isn't the best example of this for now, but I think with the interactions such as Angel Feather, where putting a Protect gift marker into the damage zone lets you heal a damage, I think that is quite big, and putting a 14k base power on top of that might even make things slightly problematic. As for Accel, I think a lot of people agree that 12k is fine. Because the deck is supposed to be more aggressive, it makes sense because you're supposed to be losing something in exchange for that insane aggression that you get from having an extra circle, which is borderline ridiculous. So that's what I think on a broader scale. Now, the other thing that I would like to touch up on is the actual difference that 1k makes. Those of us that have been playing for a while before G, like back in the actual original series, might remember how important the 1k difference actually was, because we started off with most Vanguards being 10k base, and so we played with 10k bases, so magical numbers with things like 20k, 25k, 15k and stuff like that, and then slowly throughout the Break Ride era, we started getting these 11k base Vanguards. At first, we had Cross Rides as well, which made magical numbers into 13k, but then once we hit Break Ride, that's when really everything sort of got into that 11k base, area, and then everybody sort of adapted to that, and then magical numbers became the same as they are now, so 11, 16, 21, 26. So I think the fact that it's not going to be sort of this wave where we played with 10k bases and then we moved to 11k, everybody unanimously moved, right? But here it's going to be more of a situation where if you're playing this in this clan, you might have to rethink your deck building or rethink your strategies, because you're going to have to be hitting for different kind of numbers, because that's what your clan is capable of. I think it's even more interesting in a competitive standpoint, because in that regard, for example, let's say Nova Grappler becomes the most meta deck. Let's say it becomes tier 1, it's completely dominating, and then maybe some people will change up their deck builds and include more cards that are able to create magical numbers that hit for 12, 17, 22, and 27, rather than things that, you know, are slightly not as good but can hit for 13, 18, 23, 28. So my idea is that possibly if we see a Protect or an Accel clan become the top meta, that might cause a change in deck building for every competitive player that wishes to keep up, because, you know, we don't know if this would actually happen, but it's just one of these sort of what if scenarios that I was thinking about, because I could actually see it happening. Like, if a deck becomes a really big threat to the point that everybody needs to start playing against it, then I can see people changing up their decks in order to counter it by being able to make those numbers even easier. Now, you could argue that, oh, I can just build my deck to always hit, you know, 13, 18, 23, and 28, you know, things like that, but there might be some card options in the future. Like, again, I'm saying this is a complete what if scenario, but it's possible that there are, you know, card choices in the future that you might be able to achieve those magic numbers that are more relevant for the 12k Vanguards for less of a cost or less of a commitment than you would for the 13k one. So sure, you can build your deck in a way that hits magical numbers against everything, but that doesn't mean that it might be the most effective way if the environment calls for it. So this is just something I was thinking about in a more competitive aspect. I think it's kind of interesting. The whole concept of magical numbers is going to get really switched up, because now it's like, when I'm going to be doing a deck profile, I'm going to have to go like, yeah, so like these two cards, they can make magical numbers against Accel and Protect clans, but you're going to need to do this and this and that to actually hit magical numbers against Force clans. So it's like, this kind of thing is going to be quite interesting, and I think we're going to see a lot more just diversity in people building decks, because depending on what's going to be meta, people might actually start changing things up, and so I think that's really, really interesting. So those are just some of my thoughts regarding this new sort of reveal of the base power differing between Force, Protect, and Accel, or rather Force and the rest. So let me know what you guys think. So this has basically just been me, you know, going on about what my ideas are for this new change, and overall I think it's really, really interesting because it makes the game more complex. And like, one of my biggest fears going into the reboot was that we were sacrificing a really fun and complex game, which is the G format, for something that would be a lot more basic. And I think with this presence of the different base powers, that's going to make the complexity of deck building something else, and just the way that you know, move throughout the game, the way that you play out the game, and like how careful you have to be with making columns and making sure that you're hitting magic numbers against everything is definitely going to be interesting. And it's also going to reward people for knowing, you know, the game in depth, knowing which clan belongs to which kind of marker and things like that, because then the moment you stand up the Vanguard, you're going to know what you're playing against, and you can start going against that from the very get-go. So I think this is honestly a pretty interesting thing. I still understand that some people are upset by it, or some people aren't exactly the happiest with it, but I think it's really interesting, and especially for things to come, it's looking quite good. So I do encourage you to leave your opinions in the comments as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think, you know, whether you're disappointed or happy or find this interesting. Anything goes, I just want to find out. But on that note, that's gonna be it for me today. Don't forget to click the bell button, as well as check out the social media in the description, as well as join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But for now, that's it for me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.